on the Saturday match, I was paired to play against the Swedish chess legend, Jonny Hector. So, Jonny Hector is a well-known grandmaster, of course, and I think at his prime he was almost 2600, maybe below, I didn't really check. And he is widely regarded as a tactician, as a very, very sharp player. Of course, now he is, maybe his prime years are past him, but still he remains a formidable foe. So I thought that it's a good idea to seek something positional. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't like sharp game, but when your opponent is an expert in a sharp game, it makes sense to try to take it out slowly and carefully. So this is what I did. So knight f3. Reti is one of my favorite openings. I really like it. It's nice positional with a quiet game. So d5, g3, and knight c6. And this move actually is pretty interesting. So in case somebody is looking towards an interesting repertoire for black, I mean, consider playing this against Reti, because now black wants to play e5, immediately take the center, which prompts white to play d4. Now white stops this, and one of the disadvantages that black has is he can't really play c5 and challenge the center, because e5 is impossible. There's not the queen, this is the king, and black is slightly not so flexible with challenging the center, but still this is a very viable plan. Yeah, good morning F and everybody else. So bishop g4, queen d7, lone castle also is an idea, pretty interesting. But bishop f5, he played, and yeah, I guess I have to play bishop g2 and knight b4. I've seen this idea before, I'm not super concerned. And there are sometimes lines I don't really remember when white actually allows to take on c2. Yeah, somehow, I mean, according to the modern engine, this is a possibility. For example, I've short castle, and if you take knight c2, there's knight h4. I think so. There are some ideas like this. So the bishop is unprotected, and after knight a1, knight f5, I win this bishop, then I collect the knight with b3, bishop b2, and I collect a second minor piece for the rook, and the black is just worse. So I'm not really sure where this goes, because there's also bishop c2, queen d2, and there's some crazy lines. Now this knight is under attack, I'm ahead in development, so it's just an interesting idea, but I wasn't really ready for that. So I played knight a3. Knight a3, e6, push away the guy, knight c6, and now my knight on a3 is a bit dislodged. I know that this is pretty equalish, and I had no prep at all, so I thought, okay, knight c2 makes sense. I mean, I could have played something like b3, bishop b2, short castle, c4, and I think I don't want to allow black to double my pawn structure, although it's debatable, because sometimes you get an access to a lot of dark squares. Okay, I mean, I play knight c2, and I was expecting that he's gonna play something like h6, short castle, and knight f6. So, I mean, I thought, okay, I mean, this is a possibility, b3, c4 again, or maybe knight e1, knight e3, bishop f4, probably equalish, but against the sharp player, this is probably a good idea. So this is a game from the Danish league that I played. Oh, did I say Swedish league? No, it's Danish league. My mistake. It's Danish league. Yeah, it's Danish league. Okay. So he played h5, you know? And this is a very interesting move, because now black is threatening to play at some point h4, but I felt that h5 is like an invitation to come and try to make a very sharp game. For example, if I would play short castle, I'm not really sure if h4 immediately is a threat. For example, h4, knight h4, maybe sack the exchange, maybe not. The long castle, you know, bishop d6, knight f6, rook h8. Maybe there's something because I have some problems to defend the pawn on h2. Maybe. But I think also even something like bishop e7 could be a pretty interesting idea. Prepare h4 with no loss of the material. So it's not like I was really looking at the short castle, and I thought, do I need to react? So h3, h4, these are viable choices. But the thing about h4 is that I weaken the g4 and e4 squares. For example, if the knight lands on e4, I have difficulties to get rid of this knight. Because now the pawn on g3 is under attack, it no longer is being supported by the pawn on h2. So it's not really automatic, h2, h4. I was thinking about h3, which looked normal, but then again, I'm not sure if I really want to castle short after that. I mean, I have already committed myself h3, g3, and now what I'm gonna do, for example, whatever, bishop e7, short castle, for example, g5. Do I want this? So I wasn't sure. There could be some sort of expansion for black at the king side. So I decided I'm going to ignore. I'm going to ignore black's threat, and I came up with a very interesting concept. I played knight e3, which was not part of the original plan, because once again, to remind you, I was thinking originally play short castle knight e1, knight e3, which is a bit slow. But I mean, I'm pretty solid. So I played knight e3, attacking the bishop. So I guess he has to remove it. Otherwise, any other move, I just take with f5 and bishop f4 and just enjoy a very good coordination of the pieces. So he played bishop e4 and queen b3. And this is actually a start of a larger plan, because now suddenly for black it's not easy to defend the pawn on b7. Now the obvious move is rook b8, which is what he played in the game. I thought maybe he can try to sacrifice the pawn, like let's say something like bishop d6, queen b7, and knight e7. But then again, I think that I have ideally placed my pawns at the queen side so that I can safely retreat. And the black always will be forced to show what exactly he has for the pawn, and that was pretty alright to take this approach, because it forces black to go forward, and my pawn on c3 stops any knight b4 ideas. There's no queen capture, no nothing. So I felt that this is a very difficult choice for black to make. And b6 looks weird with a light square bishop out. Doesn't mean it's not playable, but it's just a bit weird. So he played rook b8. And now you maybe start to see my big idea. He can't castle long. And this was the big idea, to play queen b3, force him to play rook b8 or queen c8, whatever, so that after knight e5, he can't castle either way, because he has committed himself to h5, and he can't castle long, obviously, because the rook has moved. So I was expecting, obviously, he's gonna trade. Now look at this knight on g2, it conveniently stops h4, because I just take with the knight. And I was expecting him to play take, and something like knight e7. I had a feeling, I was not entirely sure. I had a feeling I should be better, because he can't really castle anywhere, and I want to play short castle e4 very quick. So I was looking at some lines that are not very correct, like short castle, knight g6, and e4. For example, d takes, queen a4, let me put it on the board. And I think he's slightly worse. So I was looking at some funny ideas, like he takes on e5. I take on d5 with ideas to play rook e1, but I very quickly discovered this is actually ridiculous, because he just gives a check and plays queen d5. So I have nothing. But I had this idea to sacrifice the pawn. And, I mean, of course, I can play f4. This knight is slightly disconnected. e4 to follow. And h4 is nothing. At least I felt it's nothing. So, for example, h4 and maybe... I don't know, maybe indeed e4. Let's say bishop c5, bishop e3, takes, and I think that his king is a bit more vulnerable than mine is because I'm sort of protected. Okay, maybe I was a bit too optimistic, but that was the idea. That was the idea anyway. Some sort of lines like this. But yeah, by the way, ancient here, I think it gives some sort of a bishop g5 idea. Not short castle, but bishop g5. Ancient likes this move for some reason. Maybe long castle is a possibility, e4. By the way, that makes perfect sense. Right. So he didn't take it. He didn't take on e5. He played knight g7, and I instinctively felt this is a mistake because it gives me a lot of freedom. I was thinking also he could play something like bishop b6, take it, queen a4, and again I would just snatch the pawn. For example, let's say knight e7. Okay, I cannot take this pawn most likely. Although, by the way, it's a big question: can I or can't I? Because I think I can. Here, queen b7, and the queen escapes to d3. And again, black is like forced to show what he has, because after the short castle, in order to hide the king, he has already committed himself to h5. So it's not really very obvious what he has. Of course, he saw the idea to sacrifice the pawn, but it's difficult to see the follow-up after that. So he played knight e7, and now I thought, okay, I could of course play short castle, transpose to knight e5, d takes on e5, but why give him the pleasure? And since he has the knight on e7, which is blocking the bishop, my first thought was I could play either knight d3 or knight f3. For example, knight d3. He will play something like knight f5, and I could maybe play some sort of f3, e4, with the idea to castle long. But I didn't really want to investigate what happens after h4, g4, h3, stuff like this. So it felt pretty weird. Maybe it's fine, I don't know, like knight f4, queen h4, and king f1. But again, remember, I'm playing against a very sharp player, a very dynamic player, and I felt that I don't want this, although maybe it's interesting. And I decided to make a slightly paradoxical move. I took on c6, which is a bit strange, because it opens his bishop. But the big idea here is that I get a very easy game. So now my idea is to play e4, and you look at black's position, it's incredibly difficult to understand what he's even supposed to do. So h4 sacrifice is gone. I mean, you're not having enough pieces because you cannot castle long. And I'm gonna play, for example, h4, knight h4, takes, queen h4. I'm gonna play bishop e3 long castle. And this king cannot castle long. So h4, you can forget it. Also, black needs to deal with the e4 threat. What do you do? Because if you play f5, now that's a very big mistake. I mean, after something like h4, bishop f4, long castle, all the dark squares belong to white. So black has made on multiple weaknesses for unclear reason. So that's why he can't really play f5. And here he started to burn time. Because one of the things that especially professional chess players don't really like, they don't like unclear, I mean not an unclear, but a position where there's no clear plan. And for black it's difficult to come up with something normal. For example, I was also looking at e5, which is very aggressive, and after bishop f4, long castle, let's say something like knight g6, long castle, this is just a target. And again, he can't easily castle because the pawn on h5 is under attack. So you remember this opening sequence when he played h5? Now it's backfiring. So again, he can't really do that. And now, black decided, okay, it's time to consolidate. He played g6, protect the pawn on h5, put the bishop on g7, try to consolidate. Bishop f4 is an easy move. I'm still not afraid of f5 because there's going to be h4. Yeah, bishop g7, and now I play e4. So this is incredibly unpleasant. By the way, maybe I'll mention why I started with the bishop f4 and not with e4, because after e4 he can take it and play queen d5. Now my knight on g2 is under attack, and if I trade it, which is better for white, I wasn't sure if it's going to be enough. So this is some sort of a Petrov defense typical position. So he could play whatever, let's say even bishop d6, takes, knight e3, knight e7. I'm better, but it's not enough. So that's why I played first bishop f4, so that he doesn't have this option. I keep the option to castle both ways, which is also incredibly annoying, because for example, if he would try to go for a counter-attack with b5, try to scare me from castling long to play b4, I play short castle. Now the big question is, why do you play b5, right? Again, waste of time and some weaknesses, some targets for me to explore later. So he can't really play b5. If he will play bishop d6, then I don't remember. I think I was gonna play e4 anyway. And this also, again, should be better for me. And this king, for example, short castle, long castle. Think about the king side attack. His king is pretty much exposed. So I had a feeling this should be dread for me. He put the bishop on g7, now I play d4. Now there is no d takes on e4. Queen e4, queen d5, because the pawn on c7 is simply under attack. It's really simple. So now, again, he started to burn even more time, and he panicked. He played g5, and now this is the real mistake. I mean, his position is quite unpleasant, and he should have played short castle. But here's the thing. After short castle, he felt, and I felt, that white has a very nice way to continue the attack with something like e5. e5, g4, h3, open the king side, and this pawn can never go back. But as a matter of fact, engines don't approve of this continuation, because after knight e7, with a very fast c5, apparently white is a bit slow. For example, what was it? I think it was h3, c5, some sort of a d takes. I don't remember. I think it was some sort of a queen c7 attacking this pawn, and all of this idea to open the king side is a bit slow because my pieces for the king side attack are not positioned ideally. But this looks scary. It looks scary because e5 is a very typical idea from the French defense. There's a lot of darks for weaknesses, but normally in this position the white knight stands on f3. And then it protects the center, and then you play this typical king side attack, maybe even the king goes to g2. And if black at some point plays f6 to stop the attack, you have multiple weaknesses. Again, now I can maybe castle long, and these weaknesses are just pretty much terrible. So I'm not sure, I mean, if I would actually play e5, because I can still choose to play a positional game. Like a long castle is a bit sharper, I can play short castle and have my solid advantage. But then again, I can't really exploit this move h5, so there's a very good chance I would have played e5. So my opponent decided to go for a counter-attack with g5. And I had a suspicion it's linked together with e5. For example, if I play bishop e3, e5, which probably is not great. But if I take on d5, my knight on g2 is under attack. And if I take it, maybe there's some tricks with knight f3, etc. But although after a long castle, I think black is just once again busted because of the very weak king. So I came up with something a bit more advanced. I play bishop d2. And now the idea was that I keep the e3 square for the knight. If he plays e5, I can still take it, by the way, but I thought knight e3 is the move. Immediately applying some extra pressure against some of the weaknesses. Now the big idea is, for example, if he takes an e4, I think I can even play d5 and queen e4, or maybe just queen e4 right away. And again, he has a lot of weaknesses in his position. The king is super weak. If he takes it, knight e5, knight e5, check threat. What was it? d3, queen a4. I didn't really believe in this position for black. Like knight e3, and again, a lot of weaknesses, but maybe this is his best chance. Still try to complicate the game. But again, I'm not really sure if I will play indeed knight e3. Maybe the simple d takes on e5 is just good enough. So he didn't do it. Now he can't castle short. He decided to pull forward at the king side with h4. And this just helps me. G takes. I open the G file. And very smart rook G1. Because keep the option to play both knight f4, knight e3, or maybe knight h4 in some lines, attacking the bishop on g7. I'm still not sure. And yeah, what is black even supposed to do? Because he can't trade the queens. Because now I just win the pawn. Now this is under attack, and knight e5 is a major issue. So maybe this was his best defense. I don't know. If he plays some sort of d takes queen e4, knight e7, I just long castle, knight e3, and the attack is just killing. Because this king is weak, I'm gonna open the position, and there's no safe shelter for the black king. So black collapsed very quickly. He played bishop h6 just to remove the bishop. Again, we can't really blame black because the position is incredibly unpleasant. Take it, and a very simple knight e3. With immediate threat rook g8 check, attacking the pawn. And after knight e7, one more final trick perhaps here is that queen a4 looks very tempting idea. Win a pawn, right? I mean, you give a check, and you actually legally win a pawn. So, for example, I could take it and give a check, so that the pawn on e4 is not under attack. And let's say he plays something like king f8, and I snatch the pawn. But the big question is, why do I need this? It's just a pawn, right? Oh wait, I think I need to be careful not to blunder the queen. Rook h6, queen c5. Okay, I'm not blundering the queen, but why do I need this? It's just a pawn. So, long castle is much more natural choice to finish development, hide the king finally at the queen side, and now black's b5, b4 is extremely slow. It's not gonna happen. And now after c6, black tries to secure some sort of a counterplay and hide the king at the queen side. The attack is rolling with very, very incredible speed. Knight g4, rook g6. Yeah, I'm not sure what he should have played. Maybe rook h8 was a bit more resilient. I could give a check here, and among of all choices, I was thinking, what was it? Some doubling of the rooks, I think. Either rook g4 or rook g1, or at the right time e5. Maybe something like this. Here, here, and e5. Somehow he is holding there, but I think there's basically one shot on g6. His king is exposed, and he doesn't really stand a chance to hold this. So, yeah, rook g6 was not very good in this regard, because after knight e5, maybe he missed it. Maybe he was focused on only e5, knight f6, because now he actually sort of manages to escape, right? He sort of lives. Puts the king on f7, and the knight on f5 protects all the weak squares. Yeah, but knight e5 is killing all the fun, and now the g5 belongs to white. And after rook g1, f6, there's no chance that black can survive this. So the very simple knight g4. The pawn is under attack. I was thinking knight g8 maybe is a bit more stubborn. I just take it. Queen g6. And yeah, king e7 is queen g7 and the pawn on f6 drops. And unfortunately, I don't think queen g8 works. This was a very nice shot. I was considering to sacrifice the queen, but unfortunately, he has king d6. So I can't capture either the queen or the rook with a check. So I saw that, of course, but I felt that that would be a really nice way to finish this game with a beautiful queen sacrifice. So king e7 or king c7 is knight e5, then you collect the rook. But of course, I don't have to do it. I just take on f6. And then rook g7 decides the fate of the game with an extra pawn already for white. For example, let's say here, check, here, and mate. So yeah, he tried his last chance of 5 with clearly the idea that I'm gonna give a check, king f7, and then somehow again he lives. Probably not for long though, and also the idea is that after capture he takes with a knight. And then king f7, king d7, he can try to escape. But unfortunately for black, there's a very simple knight e5. I know the threat of queen e2, queen h5 is killing. The pawn on e4 doesn't matter at all. So if he would take with the pawn, queen e2, this king cannot escape. There's a knight. Here, check, here, and rook g7. That's it. This threat is unstoppable. The extra pawn for black doesn't even matter. And rook e7, for example, queen a2, queen h8, here, rook e7. There's never going to be a perpetual check. Never, ever, ever. There's no perpetual check. King c2, king d2, you always escape from the checks. So that's why black cannot do it. So, yeah, I mean, he made a couple of moves here. He played queen a5. And the simplest one, I thought, okay, now it's a good moment to actually take on f5 myself, because after knight f5 he loses the rook. He can't do it. And after he takes on f5, the simplest is queen e2. Also threatening queen h5, also opening the e-file, complete domination. And after, what was it? Queen a2, I think I planned to play rook g7. And again, king d8, knight e3, there's no defense from this. For example, check, king d2, that's it. Knight c8, queen e6, mate on the board. Queen d7 or everything wins, yeah. Yeah, I think everything wins here. So he played king d8, I played rook g7. Again, now I had the idea queen a2, simply play knight e3. Queen cannot join the defense, just one check, king d2. But he played queen c7 after queen h5, just resigned. Because now this threat is too much. And there's no queen d6 because of knight f7. So this position is completely hopeless. So all in all, it was a rather easy win. I didn't expect it, that this is gonna happen. Pretty rare. My opponent is very, very strong. And somehow, if I go back the entire sequence, he played out it aggressively. h5 was an interesting move. Then after the game, he said probably h5 shouldn't have been done. I mean, he should have played like h6, knight f6, but I was hoping actually that he's going to do something like this, because it also eases white's task. If your opponent is charging you at you with black, it makes your life easier because it exposes his position. So I was pretty happy I found this idea of knight e5. And now, as I already said, knight e5 should have been played, and this is where his problem started with knight e7. And yeah, now e4 is a very major threat. Bishop f4, e4. I was very proud of the ordered moves that I found. Always watching out that he can't escape to some sort of an endgame after d takes on e4, queen d5, and that's why here the pawn on c7 is under attack. Yeah, and of course g5 is a very big mistake. Yeah, so short castle, he's worse, absolutely, but not losing. But after g5, I had a feeling that's it. I mean, there's no chance that he's gonna escape it, because short castle is impossible, long castle is impossible, and most likely I'm gonna castle long and just open the center, right? So despite the fact we have a material equality on the board, there's no chance for black. And h4, he was trying to do something there, but obviously I don't have the king at the king side. So g takes, rook g1, take, knight e3. The rest, as they say, was a technique. I mean, he could have played a bit more precise, perhaps a bit more resilient. But I think already after the opening, about here, he had a very good idea where this game is heading. And when you have such a terrible position, when you know you have been playing not the best chess, sometimes the position collapses very quick. So once again, pretty nice victory for me.